Today we're taking a look at the Asus ROG Ally handheld gaming console to see what it's capable of and how good it is in terms of value for the price. Hit the like button and let's start. I got mine from Best Buy for $699. It goes in this simple box with ROG design. In the box we have a cardboard stand, charging instructions, the console itself, it has some weight to it, and underneath we have 65 watts Type-C charger and paperwork. Pretty simple, let's take a closer look at the console. The case is made of high quality plastic and designed in ROG gaming style. It has Xbox layout controls integrated. On the left side we have directional buttons, stick, view, command center buttons, and trigger with bumper on the back. On the right side we have another stick, an armory crate and menu buttons, and trigger with bumper. We also have two rear buttons. On the back side we have a glossy line that reflects RGB effect, and ROG stylized cooling openings which are intake. On the top the console has exhaust openings with buttons and ports. We have an audio jack, micro SD card port, USB Type-C, and ROG XG mobile interface, in case you have an external GPU. We also have a power button, indication, and volume buttons. Speakers are located on the front under control buttons, and we also have a mic above the menu buttons. So far everything seems steady and has good build quality. Let's connect the charger and boot for the first time. The console has RGB lights around sticks, which adds to the gaming theme. And I see a Windows 11 setup screen. That's right, this gaming console goes with Windows 11 from the box. I was going through the setup and that's where I faced my first bug. An on-screen keyboard was not showing, so I was unable to enter my Wi-Fi password. The command center was not helping as well, but after restarting everything worked. And that reminds that the console is pretty new and may have problems like this. The rest of the setup went well. The screen looks nice, it is a 7-inch Full HD 120Hz touchscreen. Image looks very crisp and smooth. Let's check the hardware specs. On the board we have a Ryzen Z1 Extreme, which is an 8-core 16-thread CPU with a 3.3 GHz base clock and 16GB of L3 cache, 16GB of LDDR5 RAM clocked at 6400 MHz, 512GB SSD storage, here's the speed check, Wi-Fi 6, and Radeon graphics with 4GB of VRAM. Let's take a look at the command center. Here we have operating modes. We have 10, 15, 25 and a max of 30 watts mode which works only with a charger. Next we have control mode, gaming profile, keyboard, performance monitor, very nice that they added this, FPS limiter, show desktop, controller, and AMD RSR buttons. So after installing all Windows updates, which is gonna take some time, let's test performance. I started with 3D Mark and here are the results in all modes. I am very impressed with the scores, especially a 15 watts, which is probably will be a very popular mode because it's the most optimal in terms of performance for the battery charge. 25 watts mode shows great performance as well, but in games it's going to drain the battery in around 1 hour. And with 65 watts charger you can charge it back to 100% in 1.5 hours. Let's now move to the games. In Apex Legends with competitive settings and 15 watts mode, getting 40 to 60 FPS range most of the time, getting micro freezes sometimes, but overall very playable. On 25 watts FPS is 50 to 70 depending on the scene. In Warzone 2.0 with low settings and FSR in performance mode, getting 40 to 50 FPS with 15 watts. I'm getting many freezes, but I'm pretty sure it's game related. With 25 watts getting around 60 FPS. I can say that even though it has Xbox controls, holding it is nothing like a controller. It has a different grip and it is heavier. I think it's gonna take some time to get used to it and be competitive in FPS games. Moving on, in PUBG on very low graphics preset, getting around 50 FPS with 15 watts and around 60 with 25 watts. The frame time graph looks good and the game runs smooth. Next, Fortnite performance settings with DirectX 12, getting 45 to 65 FPS with 15 watts and with 25 watts getting stable 80 plus FPS most of the time. I decided to test 10 watts mode as well and I was getting around 35 FPS. Frame time is not perfect, but it's still playable. So far I can say I'm very impressed with the performance this console provides. Of course in demanding online games, one charge is not going to last long, but good enough for lunch break. And if you play light games, and get an FPS limiter in use, you can squeeze pretty long gaming session out of it. Let's now check single player games. In Elden Ring on low settings, with 15 watts getting pretty stable 30 plus FPS, and with 25 watts mode getting around 40 FPS. The game runs well in both modes. In Cyberpunk, I just ran a benchmark with low settings and FSR in performance mode, and I got pretty playable average FPS in both cases. Let's run some Sony games. Spider-Man Miles Morales with very low preset and FSR in performance mode, getting around 45 FPS while swinging and around 35 FPS in fights with 15 watts mode, and with 25 watts getting 40 to 60 FPS range depending on the scene. In God of War, with the same settings, getting 25 to 35 FPS with 15 watts and 35 to 40 FPS with 25 watts. Very good result for a handheld console. I'm giving another points for cooling. Even in 25 watts mode, temperature was staying under 80 degrees and fans noise was not that noticeable. Of course the console case gets warm, but it stays in the comfort zone. And I also want to point out that the built-in speakers sounding very nice. Let's now talk about upgrade possibilities. I think the coolest and the most affordable upgrade is to buy the ROG gaming charger dock. This allows you to connect an external monitor and charge the console at the same time. For $65 you are getting the 65 watts charger with dock and a 6 feet Type-C braided cable. Here's how it's gonna work. Type-C goes to the console, HDMI to the monitor, and one USB for accessories. I had to connect both keyboard and mouse, so I ended up using a hub. Not a pretty solution, but it is what it is. You can also check third-party solution on Amazon. This one was just quicker to get for me. Let's try it out, and it is working from the first attempt. I'm using a 24-inch 1080p monitor, and it is picked up 144Hz with no problem. One of the benefits right away, I can use 30 watts turbo mode. So let's check how it performs in games. In Fortnite, DirectX 12 performance preset, I am getting stable 100 plus FPS all time. The game runs very well. Jumping in Warzone 2.0, low settings, FSR in performance mode, getting around 60 FPS all the time. In Apex Legends, with the competitive settings, I'm getting 65 to 85 FPS range depending on the scene. The game runs great, and with mouse and keyboard you can get competitive. Another benefit, you can now play games that have no controller support or are just easier to play with mouse and keyboard. Valorant, for example, medium settings, and the frame rate is over 120 all the time. Single player games also playable in Cyberpunk with low settings and FSR in performance mode, getting 60 to 80 FPS with a stable frame time. The console still keeps the temperature under 80 degrees, and even though the fans are a bit louder now, it is still in the comfort zone. We are not limited to gaming only. The gaming handheld basically becomes a portable desktop computer. Another feature I want to talk about is creating your own operating mode. I would not recommend you increase the wattage, because after trying it out, I only got a higher temps with loud fans. On the other hand, the good way to use this feature is to create low wattage mode. Minimum is 7 watts, and you can use that mode to extend battery life in light games. Overall, I think it is a very interesting device. I cannot relate this experience to the console, and for me it is more like a gaming laptop with an embedded controller. I would say if you are an enthusiastic gamer who does not scared of Windows updates and game settings, I think it is a great device that allows you to play any game and can even cover full PC needs. Let me know what you think about it in the comments. Also, we are almost at 1000 subscribers, which is huge, so make sure to stick around for the giveaway I'm planning to do. Thank you for watching, and I see you in the next videos.